Usually for a video, I like to start out with some kind of a joke or a bit, but I searched through the footage I had for this game for hours, and not a single thing was shaped like Among Us. So, I guess there's no joke today. Sorry, everybody. This is going to be another shorter video. Hopefully the last one before my next more long-form review. This is also probably going to be the shortest video I've ever made, because this is one of the shortest and most simplistic games I've ever done a review on. This is also one of those games that just kind of can't be talked about without it being spoiled by the fact that I have to put footage on the screen, so keep that in mind. I will avoid spoiling some of the more interesting boss fights and surprises though. Titan Souls is a boss rush game where both the player and the boss die in one hit. The catch is, much like the famous enemy crab, you need to attack their weak point, which means most of the time, the fights look like this. One of the best things about this game is its comedic timing. The most obvious game to compare this to is Shadow of the Colossus, and that definitely isn't an accident. Titan Souls isn't exactly subtle about taking its inspiration, not only for its core concept, but also its entire art style, directly from Shadow of the Colossus. All the art has these very angular South American-inspired designs, and all the bosses look like they were built by the Olmecs or something. But instead of being a more somber and relatively easy adventure game, Titan Souls has the potential to be one of those borderline impossible challenge games, like that one where you play as a pot and get lectured by the developer every time you lose 12 hours of progress.
I feel within me a peace above all earthly dignity.
That being said, getting through the game's base difficulty isn't that hard, and it won't take you that long. You'll only die a few hundred times. But then you try playing hard mode. And then you try beating the game with no dodge roll. And then you try either one of those with iron mode on, which means you only get one life. Why not turn on the timer and go for a world record? This is kind of the magic of Titan Souls. It channels that old school ghosts and goblins vibration to make a game that would otherwise be extremely simple, and stretches it out into something else entirely. These challenge options also give the game a fair amount of replayability, which is something a game this short benefits from significantly. If you don't typically like to play ultra-hard video games, you'll probably still find this game enjoyable. No roll mode would make me want to smash an altar and forsake God like Dracula in that one movie, and I never plan on attempting it, but I still had a lot of fun with Titan Souls. First of all, the game is designed knowing full well that the goal is to be as infuriating as possible. All of the bosses are very close to one of these checkpoints, so you never get a Dark Souls situation where you need to sprint through 8 skeletons wearing propeller hats to get to the boss you've died to 15 times. Deaths are quick, loading times are low, and it's obvious that you're intended to just slam your head into a wall until one of these things is finally dead. There are a lot of games that don't get this right, especially in the roguelike genre and its various offshoots. Figuring out a way to reduce how annoying it is to die is key in a game like this. Something else that shouldn't be surprising is each boss is kind of a puzzle. There are almost none where you can walk in and just hit their off switch without needing to dodge lasers or boulder fists. And if you switch the game over to hard mode, each fight is slightly different. Each boss will move faster, or have an adjusted moveset, or sometimes have altogether new attacks, which shakes up the puzzle a little bit and forces you to change strategy. You know, like difficulty options should actually do. I'll talk a little bit more about specific game mechanics later, but for now let's get into some of the game's more subtle artistic choices. Much like Shadow of the Colossus, the entire goal of Titan Souls is to convince you that you are probably not the good guy by the end of the game. When you get a kill on a boss, you get this extremely satisfying sound that immediately stops the action, but the screen also cuts to grayscale, and you get some pretty ominous imagery. Just like killing a colossus in Shadow of the Colossus, you have a moment of haha, followed immediately by a moment of
oh no!
The music also plays up a sense of scale and emotion as best it can, considering that this is such a small 2D game. Well, it's kind of 2D. They're a mixture of 2D sprites and 3D objects. You'll notice that a lot of the Titans are 3D models. This sort of 2.5D design was also an extremely smart move, because making the Titans 3D but the player 2D allows you to do all kinds of interesting stuff that would be difficult to make work in 2D, visually speaking. If you were going to make this plant a sprite instead of a 3D model, think about all the extra animation and sprite work and coding you would need to do to make these vines move up so the player could walk under them. With a 3D model, slap a collider on the vine, make vine go up and down with an animation, and you're good to go. This sort of brings me to one of the real reasons I wanted to talk about Titan Souls, which is this game is one of the best examples of efficient development I've ever seen. If you're a solo developer, or maybe a small team of like 3 dudes, this is the type of game that you should probably start off making, especially if you aren't very experienced. You might be thinking, but Team Cherry made Hollow Knight, and that was only 3 guys. You probably aren't Team Cherry. I don't think Team Cherry are human. I'm pretty sure they hatched out of an egg sac in the basement of MIT and have been designed in a lab to develop games. Don't bank on this being you. Titan Souls is very simple. You're a guy with a few frames for a walk cycle and a normal sprite sheet. You die in one hit, so you don't have any resources to worry about. That means there's no health system, no complex damage system, no mana bars, no stamina, just either being dead or being alive. Easy. What can the character do? The character can shoot 1 arrow. Just 1. So we don't need to do any dumbass math for an arrow quiver or something, and we don't need to add like bomb arrows. And the arrow is just a simple projectile. And since we're operating in 2D, it doesn't even need to travel on a parabola. It doesn't really get much easier to code than that. But then you need to pick up the 1 arrow again and shoot it, so why not make it so that you can pull the arrow back to you like Thor's hammer? Now, if you hold down a button, the arrow will move towards the player, also pretty easy to code. Now, let's give the character a dodge roll, but don't waste time trying to give it iframes like in a Souls game. It just makes you move fast in a direction. So now we have a main character with 2 actions that we can bind to 2 buttons and movement on an analog stick. This would take a developer that knows what they're doing less than 30 minutes to code. The only thing here that's going to take a while is going to be the sprite sheet for the animations. So now you have a character that can shoot an arrow forwards and backwards. Time to make some stuff to shoot at. They also die in 1 hit and only have 1 weak point. Let's not get too complicated. Now you have your core concept in place, and you can spend the overwhelming majority of your development time making sure you have all your assets and making sure each boss is unique and interesting. You aren't going to get any feature creep with a game this simple. You aren't going to get halfway through designing a gigantic 3D map and die of exhaustion. Your scope is incredibly limited. Obviously, since Acid Nerve is pretty talented, they were able to pull off this entire thing with really tightly designed boss fights that bring the whole project together, which was kind of the real challenge of making this game. A lot of indie developers just have insanely lofty goals, and sometimes it works out, like in the case of Hollow Knight, but more often than not, it will fall short like Shattered, or just become a complete fucking nightmare like Cube World. If I ever stop being a piece of shit and get back into trying to learn game design, this is the kind of thing I'm going to try to remember. I guess this is probably a big reason why so many people start with horror games, which tends to get away with being mechanically much more simple than other genres. Titan Souls is a fun and challenging game that you can knock out in an afternoon. Or you can spend a week suffering through its challenge modes, or you can spend 10 years grinding out a speedrun personal best. It even has a free demo you can try if you don't really want to risk that $15. Definitely grab it if you see it drop down to 3 cents during a Steam sale though. And the summer sale is right around the corner. If you want to see more videos like this one, consider subscribing. Leaving a like and a comment are also very helpful. If you actually want to get notifications for the channel, remember to pray to the bell, and down in the description I have a link to my Discord community if that's something you're into. We have a lot of very talented artists. And finally, you should follow me on Twitter so you don't miss any important updates. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.